All right, YouTube, I'm back. Here's tip number one. First of all, when you're riding on a trail such as this, the trail's kind of narrow and it's very packed in the middle. The problem with this bike is, unlike the conventional fat bikes, this one weighs almost 40 pounds more because of the battery and the motor. And I find that it's probably the case if you're a little heavier than I am. I'm about 200 pounds. What I found is with this bike and me, that puts me close to 300 pounds. If you steer anywhere near the side of the trail, you sink immediately and you twist off the road, much like I have done just here. And then what you see is, this is what happens. So you go off trail and you dig up the ground. You can see it over there. I did it over there as well. So, and partially as an example and partially as a it's actually just what it is. So that's what happened, and you can see it over here as well. So that would have been my front wheel, and that's my back wheel. So here I went off the trail, that's my front wheel, I'm gaining back on, and then the back wheel goes off. Now that's the first tip. The second tip that I find very important is speed settings. So when you're driving through the woods like this, you have various settings. As I said in my last video, this particular bike has Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo. So my recommendations are very simple. If you're going through the woods like this and you're in muddy territory, so summertime, spring, fall, muddy areas, or wintertime like this, and you have snow and it's soft, I would suggest the Eco mode only. That's the lowest power setting. Anything beyond that is a waste because you can't take advantage of it, because you're an accident waiting to happen essentially. The turbo is just too insane. It's a good way to launch you into a tree. You get very little control at that kind of speed. The only time, now I've used this in the fall, the only time you can really use turbo, which is what I would recommend, is if you're on a straightaway on a long trail, or for instance, if you're heading up a considerable incline and you have a good run at it. If you have a good run at it, then I would suggest that. If you don't have a good run at it, I would suggest you don't turn that on, because as you hit the top, you might find yourself, as you just pedal a little bit and you've come to a slow crawl, there's so much torque that you'll find the bike will launch itself, and you may get yourself thrown off the trail, or you may find you're going to get yourself into a tree very quick. So the other thing, I've set it at turbo, for example, and I'm going to show you. What happens is when you pedal, there's so much torque that as you pedal, the wheel automatically spins. Probably not a good example right here, but there you go. There's a perfect example of it there. There's so much power and speed that basically you're going to be digging up the trail. So as you can see here, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to try one more time again. Here we go. Let's get the electric to kick in. There you go. That was a perfect example. Now if you look at, and there it was just about to try to go off on its own. What I've done now is I've dug a hole, and depending on the season, you can make a nice mess. So I would recommend not doing that. I'm assuming that the stick was broken. But that would be the consequences of the trails and of the ground. So turbo is not the place to be. Normally I travel in the trails near my house called South March Highlands. It's a conservation area, and this area here has some beautiful trails. I always travel in eco mode. One, I like to get the extra range. And two, anything beyond that, there's not much point. These particular types of bikes are power assisted. So this is a power assist bike. This is not an electric bike. Again, you look at my last video, I'll put a link somewhere here. You can see the last video. There is no motor in the wheel. The motor is in the hub, nothing in the front. There is no controller. So most of these electric bikes as well. So the reason for this torque spin is that as you press down and you pedal, it senses that torque. Because there's no throttle, you can't ease it in. It's seeing how much you're pressing down, and it's going to distribute the equal amount of force. And depending on the mode you're in, it multiplies it So eco mode is like a 1 to 1.2 or something like that. Turbo can be up to something like 4 to 1, so every one pedal is like 4 to the engine, the motor. So that means you're putting in 5 times what you would normally put as a normal person. So you can see by this, you can dig quite the hole. So again, I would recommend against that. What else am I want to cover off here? Yeah, so no throttle control. Heavy weight, we covered that. I think that's about it. Again, I said this in my last video, if you're going to buy one of these, don't buy it because it's trendy and you think you want to be a trendy type. Buy this because you need it. The whole point of getting out is to get exercise. As I said in my last video, I have asthma, and the reason I purchased it was to get around the asthma. So my advice is, if you think you need this, then go for it. If you're going to be riding long distances, if you use the eco mode on these bikes, you can get up to 100 kilometers. Okay, I can see. Buy one of these if you're going to be doing long rides. But if it's just to be trendy, save your money. And respect the trails, and that's about it, YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments, just put them below and I'll do my best to reply. All right, Gamer Dadster out.